Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mark with Spiguyver Backpacking. Thank you for joining me today. So I'm out here on my back patio and I have a new little stove here, one that I got a couple of weeks ago. I've tried it out a couple of times and I really like it. So I wanted to show this to you today. This is the MiniBull Design Gnome. Now this is the Turbo Gnome. It comes in two varieties. One is just the regular Gnome and then this one being the Turbo Gnome. The difference are the holes. As you can see here, those holes are what set the Gnome and the Turbo Gnome apart. So the Turbo Gnome is a little bit better for something like boiling, or if you're going to be out on a trip where you need to boil something. If you're going to be doing any baking, you probably want the regular Gnome. But for what I want to do, this one's going to work out pretty well. So today I wanted to use it a couple different ways to show you exactly what this can do. So let's go. Alright, so this Gnome by MiniBull Design is pretty versatile, and if you go to Tinny's website, the MiniBull Design website, you can actually find some other pieces that go along with this. So I bought this, which is the simmer ring, and what it does is it really turns the Gnome Turbo into a regular Gnome by closing off all of those holes. And so now you don't have the venting through there and the bigger flame pattern. It really narrows it down and allows you to do something like baking. Additionally, if you have a choke hazard, which is something you guys have seen me review before, the choke hazard has two pieces, the reservoir and then the actual burner, and you can get that in either the regular or the turbo. Mine's the regular. So this would be the difference in the top, both of the Gnome and of the choke hazard. If you went with the regular or the turbo, are the holes or no holes. But one cool thing, if you were to fill this with fuel and then not burn it all, you can get a cap that's just like what goes on the choke hazard, which can go onto this, close it up, seal it up, and now you could carry it. I'd throw a rubber band over there just to make sure that it doesn't come off, but you could carry it with a little bit of fuel still left in there. So that's a cool feature, something that you can do with that. But I like the ability to add a little simmer ring and be able to change it from just something that you can burn with to something that you can bake with. So let's see how this thing works. Okay, so I moved around a little bit. I'm gonna reach over here real quick and grab the scale. Slide that over. So what I'm gonna use, so first what we're gonna do is I've got, let me show you here. I have 2 cups of cold water in my Toaks 550 milliliter pot. I have my Toaks pot stand / windscreen. Now I'm gonna use just 3 of the 4 pieces for this pot because this pot's a little bit smaller diameter. If you use the 4, it has a tendency to be close to the edge and can push it apart, as I've shown in the past. If you use 3, it creates a good triangle. Underneath the stove, I'm gonna have a little piece of aluminum with the stove sitting on top of it. I'm gonna start off with just half an ounce of heat to see whether or not I can bring 2 cups of water, cold water, to a boil using this. So let's get this thing set up. Let's get it going. I did want to tell you guys the weights, so let's take a look at the weights as well. So here we are in grams, zeroed out. If I put the stove on there, I've got 11.1 grams. So that's what this thing comes in at. If I add the simmer ring to the Gnome, now we have 16.2 grams. You can see the inside is filled with carbon felt, and so that's what absorbs and holds the fuel while you're using it. So let's go ahead and get this thing fueled up and check it out. Okay, so here you can see that I have half an ounce of fuel. I'm gonna go ahead and pour that in. Just pour that right in there. And I'm gonna go ahead, light her up. She's lit. Pot stand goes on. Close it up. Put that on top. And there we go. That easy. Now, because of it being so bright out here right now, you can't really see the flame pattern. So what we'll do is I'll go inside and get a little bit of a film with it in the darker environment so you can see the flame pattern, and let you check that out. And we'll put that up here so you guys can see it. Nice day out here, and this is what we're working with to be out here doing some testing. Gotta say, it's not so bad. So we've talked about it before, but I ended up having to go inside and get my windscreen to put around this Toke's pot stand because it just does not block out any of the wind. It's not that windy out here at all, but just that breeze I could tell was completely robbing this thing of any efficiency that it was having. I did have to add a little bit more fuel to it. It ran out before it got to a boil. There's bubbles all along the bottom, so it's getting close. I can definitely feel heat coming off this thing again. That's the one thing with this stove that I've noticed, is that if you don't have enough fuel in there, as it burns down, it's definitely hotter with more fuel in there, but as it burns down, the temperature coming off of the stove also tends to decrease. So you're gonna have a hot stove while it's pretty full, but as it gets to probably the last third, the temperature of it really does drop off pretty significantly. Just something you have to deal with when you're working with this stove, something to keep in mind. But we're gonna keep this thing going, get this thing to a boil, and then I've got a second test that I wanna do. Now, none of the stuff that we're doing today is scientific. I'm not timing this. I'm not accurately measuring everything out. You know, I did a ½ ounce to see whether or not that would bring 2 cups to a boil. I added probably another ¼ ounce, maybe a little bit over that, just enough to hopefully get this thing to a boil, bring it back up, and added the windscreen just to kind of keep a little bit of that heat in there. But then we're going to be moving on to step 2 of this. Okay, so it's been on here for a little while, and it's getting really close. I can hear it starting to sizzle inside when I pick it up. It's steaming. There's bubbles now coming to the top in pretty rapid succession, so it's getting really close. But I've got to say, this is not the way I would do it next time. I would use my caldera cone and put this inside of the caldera cone to make sure that I trap all the heat in there, and I think it would work a whole lot better. I may actually do another test with that just to talk about that, to show you guys that that is that much more efficient than the way that this thing works. This little Toke's pot stand just doesn't cut it for me. It's good for me for right now for the next test because of the spacing, and I don't really have a good pot stand to do what I want to do next. The caldera cone, however, for this test would have been perfect and is what I probably should have used. Hey, you know, you try, you test. Sometimes it goes perfect, sometimes it doesn't go quite the way you expected. But we have a boil. So, it will work. It will boil. So now that I've proven that, let's get this one shut down. I'm gonna blow out the flame here. That's one thing that is cool about this, is I can take this pot off of here, blow out the flame, and start over. So I've got another test. Let's get into it. Okay, so now that we have proven that this thing will boil, although the method that I used was not the most efficient, and it probably used close to a full ounce to boil those 2 cups of water. Now I've got the simmer ring, and I've placed it onto the stove, onto the Gnome, to cover up those holes. What I've done is I've taken half a cup of water, put it in this Betty Crocker triple berry mix, mixed it up, have it in my batch stove's 10 cm baking dish. I've got my 12 cm pot. It has the spacer inside. I'm going to drop that down in there, put the top on it, take the Toke's pot stand, which just completely fell apart. I'm going to add the fourth piece to it. Let me set this down. So I'm going to add this fourth piece, creating a little bit bigger pot stand, maybe. And this is one of the problems with it. It's not the easiest thing to work with. It's a little bit finicky, and sometimes it slides out. You can see that it's kind of loose there, but I can put this over the top of this, set my pot on top of it, and it creates a nice base. The Caldera cone, while it works great, would not be able to fit this one because I don't have one specific for this pot. So what I'm going to do, Tinny says fill it all the way up till you can see fuel. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill it up till I can see fuel. I've got the simmer ring on there. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to set a timer for 20 minutes. Let it go for 20 minutes. Blow it out. Even if there's fuel left in there, we're going to blow it out. We're going to let it sit for 10 more minutes. And we're going to come back and check on this muffin. So I'm going to go ahead, fill this thing up right now. Okay, I've got it right up to the holes, so it is absolutely chock full of fuel. Light her up. Get this on top. I've got the bail handle on this one, so I'm going to leave the bail handle up. Set this down. I'm going to take my little lightweight titanium windscreen, wrap that around there to keep some of that heat in there while it's baking. And we're gonna go back in 20 minutes, take a look at it, see how it's progressing, and then let it sit just that little last bit to finish up. So let's do this. Okay, so we're about 19 minutes into baking this, and it's smelling really good. I'm gonna go ahead and take a look, show you guys what it looks like. Let it run out for the last minute, take it off, blow out the stove, and let it sit and just finish inside of the pot for the next 10 minutes. So let's take a look. It's looking pretty good. Not sure it's done quite enough, but I guess we'll find out after those last couple minutes. Got some friends out here that like to come visit from time to time. Hey guys. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes since I took the pot off of the heat, and it's been in there just doing its thing. And I take the top off, and I can tell you right now, it's not quite done. It's still a little bit mushy. So I'm gonna light the stove back up, put it on for another 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look. All right guys, so what I did was I put it back on, and using the Gnome with the simmering on there, it took another about 20 minutes, maybe even a little longer, till it burnt out. I did add a little bit of fuel, and so it went until that burnt out. And when I opened it up, I wasn't sure that it was done. If you look here, the top of it isn't like a golden brown, which is how they normally are, but I haven't done a lot of baking in this bigger pot. I usually do it in the smaller one with the 12 ounce pot inside rather than this 10 cm. And so it's possible that it just was a little bit different there, and so that's what took a little bit longer. But also, when I opened up the pot itself, inside there was a lot of condensation. And so that condensation, I think, is what kept it from really getting that brown, that golden brown. Right now it's still really hot, but I'm gonna go ahead and tip it over. As you can see, it did not stick at all. It's pretty moist, but it looks like it's done. I'm gonna let it sit for a couple of minutes, and then we'll cut it open and take a look at what it looks like inside. All right, so moment of truth. We're gonna cut it open, see whether or not it's actually cooked all the way through. And it looks like it is. Looks pretty good. On top, it's a little bit still like wet. I don't know if you can see, like it's cake-like in the middle, but on the very top, it's got a weird consistency, and I think that's because of all the condensation that was up there. But it's definitely done, and I'm sure it tastes great. So I'm gonna give this to Dylan. He's gonna eat it up and enjoy it. Now, what are my impressions of the Gnome? So it's not anywhere near as hot or as hard a flame as the Mini Atomic, the Spiguyver stove, so it doesn't boil in near the quick time that those do. It takes quite a bit longer to bring even that 2 cups of water to a boil. Now, it could have been a couple of things going on with that, but I think overall it just doesn't burn nearly as hot. The second thing, when using it for doing any baking, I think it works pretty well for that. It's just a matter of figuring out the pot that you're using and getting it set up so that it's keeping the heat in and not letting it escape, and figuring out how much time it's going to take using what you're using. So I'll keep trying it out, testing it out, and let you guys know what I think of it. But for the first test, you know, we had some success, some failure with it. In the end, we got it to do what we wanted to do, and we'll keep working with it. I'll see you guys down the trail.